So tonight I'm going to be talking through everything that we know about Kill Team, and I'll give you my opinions and my thoughts, and we'll probably round it off with a little bit about what I think now that I've got a bit more information, but I'll make everything clear as we go through it. What is the stuff that's kind of my opinions, what's the stuff that's a bit of guesswork, and I'll make sure that you know which stuff is the fact, so you know exactly what it is that you're getting into with this. So without further ado, this is a brand new version of Kill Team. And when I say a new version, it's not an updated version. It's not the most recent or the current Kill Team version with some tweaks in it. This is a brand new, built from the ground up, new rule set, a completely new game. So the current system that we have now is quite closely linked to Warhammer 40k and its stat lines and things like wounds and data sheets and stuff. This has been completely redesigned. Think of it more in the vein of how Warcry is compared to Age of Sigmar, rather than how current Kill Team is almost a branch off from 40k. So for those of you who used 40k, who used Kill Team as a way to kind of learn some of the basic stuff for 40k, the new Kill Team is completely separate rules, completely separate mechanics, completely separate stat lines. The game is alternative activation, which I think a lot of people have been crying out for quite some time, and it does draw a lot of its kind of design cues from some more modern rule sets. So if you remember my live stream a few weeks ago that I did about is Warhammer rules stuck in the past, then you can see a lot of the stuff that I talked about, some of the games which I thought had some really interesting kind of modern mechanics. You can see a lot of that has been drawn on for this new version of Kill Team. Now, Kill Team, this is set to go up for pre-order in August 2021. And at this point in time, when we're recording, there's no price point has been kind of talked about for it. But my best guess, and this is just a guess from me, I've not kind of sort of seen any leaks or anything like that. The guess from me is this is probably going to be about £125 UK, which equates to roughly $199 over in the States, about 155 euros in Europe, and about 290 Australian dollars. And for anybody asking about, well, that doesn't equate properly, those are the GW exchange rates, not the global exchange rates. So if you see a game on a UK website for £125, it will be $290 Australian on the Australian site. And I stress that is my best guess, but based upon what you get in the box, the price of box sets that have been released recently, and where things have been in the past, I think £125 is what we can expect. So let's have a look and see what you get in the box for your money. So here is a picture of everything that you get in the box. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about this, but you can see that there's dice, there's transfers, there's tokens, there's some books in there, there's cards, there's measuring devices. But notice that there are no stat cards in that picture. So for those of you that are still convinced we're going to get stat cards, I'd put money on it that there's going to be no actual stat cards in this game. So like Warcry has stat cards for each individual model in your warband, it doesn't look like we're going to get them in Kill Team. But we'll come on to where the stats will be found soon. Oops, skip ahead a bit there. So this first one is these are the two factions that you get in the box, and these are the Veteran Guardsmen, and we also have the Commandos as well. These are the two factions. The Veteran Guardsmen here are painted up like the Death Corps of Krieg, which is seeing a plastic release for the first time. For those that don't know, up until now we've only been able to get those from Forge World in resin, and these are new orc sculpts which are basically being called Commandos. And these are both separate factions to Imperial Guard and to the Greenskins, which are also going to be available to play. So these are separate factions, if you like, from that standard Imperial Guard and normal orcs. These are multi-part kits. They're fully customizable. For example, they don't just get built one way, or not like a couple of options type thing. They're not push fit, and they come with some different kind of customizable options. So yeah, these will be available separately at some point in the future. If you choose not to buy this box set, you can still be able to buy these models separately in the future. The set also comes with a nice card mat to play your games on, which is the regular sort of 30-inch by 22 inches or 760 millimeters by 568 millimeters if you're more into metric sizes. And these are the standard kill team sizes, the same as the Warcry sizes as well. It also comes with 2 books. One is the core rule book, which contains all of the rules of how to play the game, but it does not include any of the model stat lines. The current Kill Team book for current edition does have all of the stats for the different factions in that one core book. The new version won't have that. You'll also get this sort of release-specific Octarius book, which I assume you won't be able to get outside of this release. And it'll have things like themed missions and some background for this particular set. Plus, it'll have the stat lines in for the 2 factions that you get inside this box for the models that are included. And we do know that Games Workshop mentioned this when they did their stream. They're releasing a kind of a chapter-approved type of a book, which will come out on launch day as well, which will have all of the stats to allow you to play these 2 factions. Well, I'm saying these 2 plus a total of 21 different factions, and we'll come on to those factions a little bit later on. But it'll allow you to play those 21 different factions from release day. There will be some limitations on the models you can take, and judging by what the website shows now, I think we know what those are going to be, and I'll show you that website later on as well. For those that haven't seen it up close, this is the terrain that you'll get in the box. It's very orc themed. It's kind of got a little bit of Mad Max kind of sort of wreckage type feel to it, and I'm sure that some people will absolutely love this. Some bits already came out in the Speed Freaks box, so it's not all brand new stuff, but quite a lot of it is. Also included in the box, and it's been sort of the main talking point recently, has been these kind of these measurement range templates. So these are used for movement and also for range, and there is 4 available sizes. There is triangle, circle, square, and pentagon, and these are used throughout the game to give you movement ranges. And sort of things that they affect, like aura sizes, things like flamers, how far a flamer can shoot, for example. And they can also be used in like multiples, such as like 3 circles is a movement measurement, for example. So each shape also translates to 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, and 6 inch, as you can see in the shapes there below. And GW have even said you can still use your tape measure as well if you want to. So if it says you can move 3 circle, that's 6 inches, you can still use your 6 inch tape measure. Now, this is my opinion bit. My issue is kind of with the use of the symbols. It feels like a design choice as opposed to a really sort of good reason to use symbols rather than just measurements. But if it does prove to speed up the game, if it does kind of prove to make it more easier to get into, then I'm sure we'll all kind of hold our hands up and say, well done, GW. But so time will tell, or whether that's the case. One thing they have been talking about is things like movement, sort of up and down buildings and things will be like, to move up a level in a building will be a circle of movement, if you like. So 2 inches of movement. So regardless of whether it's 2 inches, 2.5 inches, 3 inches, to move to that first level will just be like 1 circle's worth of movement, if you like. So that might streamline it a little bit. It still didn't need to be called a circle for my mind, but that's kind of irrelevant. But we will see if it works out for the best. But that's been the main talking point at the moment. However, they're here to stay, so kind of get used to them or continue to use your tape measure, entirely up to you. So we now know as well, we know about the stat lines, and this is basically like a data card or a stat line for a trooper veteran. So in the top left there, you can see that we have the name of the model, the trooper veteran, as I mentioned, and you have a little bit of flavor text about the model. Next to it on the right, we have the stat line. So we can see there where it says M is movement. So this is, as I said before, about 3 circles of movement, which we know is the equivalent of 6 inches. So 3 circles is 3 times 2 inches. APL is the action point limit, and this is how many actions a model can take. So we know that most kind of human-sized models, if you like, can take 2 action points, except things like Marines, sort of intercessors, that type of stuff. Superhuman type things might be able to take more. So I think we've read that they're going to take 3 action points. And the assumption is you will get so many action points to spend on your faction in a turn. And this is one way that it's going to sort of, in a current kill team, if you've got a horde army, you can out-activate your opponent. The same thing happens in Warcry. If I've got 10 models and you've got 5 models, I get 10 activations, you get 5 activations. So I think this is one way we're going to see kind of both players get the same amount of actions, and you can choose how you want to spend them across your models. We also don't know for certain what actions are at the moment. We can make a wise assumption that an action is going to be like a move, a shoot, an attack, that sort of things, but we haven't had those confirmed yet. GA is the only part of the stat line that hasn't been confirmed yet. We don't know for certain what this is. The guesses have been it's kind of something like a group allowance or maybe a group activation or something, but we don't know for certain what that's going to be. DF is your defense, so this is how many dice you will roll to try and defend a ranged attack. SV is the save. This is the stat that you need to equal or better to save any ranged attacks with your defense dice. And W is wounds, so this is how many wounds or kind of health points that your model has before it is taken out. Now moving down as well below that, we can see that there is these are the weapons that are available. So we can see lasgun and bayonet here. In front of those two is a symbol, which is either the crosshairs, which is the symbol for a ranged weapon, or it's the crossed swords, which is the symbol for a close combat weapon. And we'll come on to these in a little bit when I talk about how combat works and how attacks work. Right along the bottom there of the card there as well, you can see that we have keywords. The one that's in orange bold there shows them what faction the model is from. So this one is a veteran guardsman. So veteran guardsman is an actual faction in this case. And the next keywords are relevant for when certain effects kind of target a certain type of keyword. And you can see there where we have a regiment in brackets there. That's where you can choose for your veteran guardsman to be the Death Corps of Krieg, for example, or you could just have a completely kind of homebrew type of faction using those models. Next up, we talk about how ranged weapons work. So weapons generally have no maximum range in Kill Team in this new version, and the reason for this is that the play area is relatively small. The assumption would be that any of the weapons in this universe will be able to at least kind of stretch across the battlefield. But along the list there, you can see that basically we got, for the flamer, we've got SR on the thing there. If I can bring up my little laser pointer here, you can see SR, and that is your special rules. And in this case, the flamer only has a range of red hex, which we know is 6 inches. So a flamer can only shoot 6 inches. It's not like a flamer can shoot right away across the battlefield, for example. And it also has a rule called Torrent White Circle, which means it will hit all models within the white circle range, which we know is 2 inches of the target model. So as the kind of Promethean fire sort of fires out, it will hit some of the models around it within 2 inches as well. Now the stats along the line there as well, so for both of these, the flamer and for the long las, we can see A, which is the number of attack dice. This is how many dice you will roll when you make an attack. And then we also have BW/WS. This is your ballistic skill or weapon skill, and this is the number that you need to equal or better on those attack dice that you've rolled. So for the flamer, you roll 5 dice and you need 2 pluses. Next, also, so when you roll those dice, there are 2 different types of hits. There are standard successful hits, and then there are critical hits. So anything you hit on a 6 is classed as a critical hit. D is the damage, so this is how much damage you will do if you have a successful hit. On these particular models, they're a little bit different to some of the others because the numbers are the same, but normally the first number will be how much damage you will do with a standard hit, and the second number will be how much damage you do with a critical hit. And the reason these are a little bit different is because the flamer is pretty powerful to start with, and the long las has a different modifier if it does have a critical hit, which we'll come on to now. So you can see there where we've got this this question mark here. This is basically what like a critical kind of achievement type thing. And this has got MW3. We know this means mortal wounds 3. So if you roll your 4 dice here and you get 4 6s, then you will do 12 mortal wounds before your opponent even gets the chance to roll any defense dice. The chances of getting those 4-6s are pretty slim. But basically, mortal wounds are wounds that come off before your opponent gets to try and defend. So once you've rolled your attack dice, your opponent then rolls the number of defense dice that was on there, the stat card that we looked at, and they're trying to achieve their save number. And the way that the attack works is for every successful save that the opponent has, they negate one of the successful hits. And if they want to negate any of the critical hits, it needs a critical save, or it needs 2 successful saves to cancel out a critical hit. So that's quite an interesting way that works. Now, close combat works in a very different way. So there are no saving rolls in close combat. The idea is both players are kind of fighting against each other, and it's not like you're attacking your opponent and they're trying to save it. If, for example, you've got a tiny little kind of Gretchen and you're coming up against a Marine, the Marine is not going to kind of stand there trying to save himself against the knife. He's going to attack straight back. So both players roll their melee dice at the same time. And then starting with the attacker, so whoever's the aggressor in this, each player takes it in turns to decide if they want their successes to equal a hit and cause damage, or to equal a parry and stop one of their opponent's hits from getting through. So on this particular one here, the power weapon, you can see that the power weapon rolls 4 dice and it's trying to achieve a 3+. A standard hit does 4 damage, but a critical hit does 6 damage. And it also has a special rule there, which is called lethal 5+, and that means that its critical hits are not only on a 6, but also on a 5 as well. And my assumption is that you can only parry a critical hit with a critical hit as well. So it's going to be quite interesting. This is one thing I want to kind of see how it plays out, because it does feel like it's going to kind of slow down a little bit at this point, where you both roll your dice and then you kind of look and you go, all right, well, I've got 3 hits and you've got 3 hits, so I want one of mine to hit you. And there's going to be this weird kind of stutter in the game. I think I would have preferred it to almost say, I've got 3 hits, you've got 2 hits. That means I hit you 3 times. I hit you 1 more time than you hit me, so 1 damage goes through. I think that would potentially speed it up. But until we play it out, I'll reserve judgment on that one. But that's the one rule at the minute where I think I feel like it could kind of stutter in the flow of the game a little bit on that one. Movement, we've talked about with those beautiful new movement templates, is quite an interesting one. So it's changed in quite a big way. However, how it's measured and shown is what's thrown a few curveballs, for example. So a model can move up to its M stat, which in this case is like 3 circles, for example. But we see here in this picture at the bottom here, we can see here that the movement is from the front of a base. If you can see my little red pointer there, from the front of a base to the front of a base. So much in the same way we would do it now with kind of a tape measure, we'd move that 2 inches or that 4 inches or whatever. However, when I'm used to using templates in things like Marvel Crisis Protocol or Star Wars Legion, you move from the back of the template to the front of the template, and these measurement sticks are basically kind of cut to the right length. That gets you the full movement. And if you've got a bigger base, you get a little bit of extra bonus movement. That's just part of the game. So it's not going to be a case of kind of put the template in front of the base and then move the base to the end of the template. It's going to be exactly the same as how we move it as we do now with tape measures. We also know that moving over or up and down terrain will reduce movement by a number of increments. So this is one of the reasons I think that they've put these kind of shapes in there, for example. So if you move over a piece of terrain here, it will sort of reduce your movement by 1 circle. So instead of being able to move 3 circles, 6 inches, you'll be able to move 2 circles, 4 inches. And I mentioned before about the movement up and down in heights of terrain. The way it's been worded is that basically it will just be a movement up might be 1 circle of movement, for example. So again, this has kind of been the biggest talking point, and I can kind of see both sides of people's arguments. I think the symbols are a bit random. I don't know why they didn't just leave them as numbers, but by the same stretch, it doesn't exactly break the game, and I'm sure we'll all get used to it very quickly anyway. So you don't need me to go any deeper into that stuff. Now here we can also see a couple of these data stats. On the data card, there is space for abilities and unique actions. And that's where these specialist skills come in to show what kind of sets that model apart from all of the different other options that you could have taken. So on the left there, we can see the hardened veteran, which is one of the options you can take for the veteran guardsman. He's a little bit more resilient. He can basically negate one of his wounds on a 5+, and it can also ignore APL modifiers. And that suggests that there are going to be things in the game which will modify the action points limit that you can take. So it might be if you've taken damage or over half your damage, you might sort of lose one action point. Or maybe if an opponent sort of hits you with something, it might remove an action point or something like that. And the other one, the bottom right one there, basically it's called Signal. That costs 1 action point to do, and that is for the comms veteran, which again is another model that you can have. And he can basically trade in one of his action points and give it to another friendly model within the Pentagon range there, which is 6 inches. So as long as they're not in the engagement range of an enemy, you can basically give another model an extra action point, which might be useful for sort of grabbing an objective or something like that. Next up, we have this, what we call the 4 different specialisms. Now, specialisms are something that we know about in current Kill Team. However, it looks a bit different here. It says that basically these are the 4 that a model can be. It can be combat, staunch, marksman, and scout. And also here we can see as well that these symbols are on the bottom of the stat cards, and it shows the 4 different symbols. 2 of them are kind of greyed out, 2 of them are orange. I'm assuming that the orange ones are the ones that you can choose from for this particular model. Now what we do know is this is going to be used in narrative games, maybe for some kind of campaign setting for leveling up your characters or something like that. So by them saying that, it would suggest that it might not be used in matched play. But this is kind of yet to be confirmed, but that is the assumption of what it is. This is the Kill Team website, and here, a lot of this information I've kind of went through. It shows you the box and shows you the models and bits and pieces. A little bit of a kind of background story thing, but it tells you about the factions. So it says, across the galaxy, small teams of combat specialists can be found among every race and creed. They're employed to take on the most dangerous missions when deploying an entire army is out of the question. And here are the 21 different factions that I assume are going to be playable from day one in their kind of their chapter approved type book. So obviously we've got Space Marines there, and if you click on these individual ones, it basically tells you the models that I assume will be available to use. And unsurprisingly, there are 10 different options for Space Marines. So we've got intercessors, assault intercessors, infiltrators, incursors, reavers, heavy intercessors, tactical marines, scouts, scout snipers, and Deathwatch veterans. So that, as always, there's a good choice of models for Space Marines. But then when you come down to some of the other factions, for example, Grey Knights has only got 2 choices, the Grey Knight and the Justicar. If you come across to Imperial Guard, so Imperial Guard is a separate faction from those veterans. Imperial Guard have Guardsmen, and they have Tempestus Scions. You then have Forge World, which is basically Skitarii. So you've got Skitarii Ranger, Skitarii Vanguard, Sicarian Rust Stalker, and a Sicarian Infiltrator. You come across the Ecclesiarchy, I think that's the right word. And we've got a Battle Sister, a Sister Repenter, and an Arco-Flagellant. We've got Talons of the Emperor, which we've got the Custodian Guard and the Sisters of Silence. We've also got Thousand Suns, where there's a Rubric Marine and a Zangor. We've got Commandos, which is the new orcs that we see in the Kill Team starter box. So we've got a Commando Nob, Commando Dagger Boy, a Breacher Boy, a Burner Boy, Comms Boy, Rocket Boy, Slasher Boy, Sniper Boy, a Grot, and that's it. And I think all of those are available from the kit that's in the box. We've then got Death Guard, where there's essentially a Plague Marine or a Poxwalker. There's a Chaos Space Marine there for the Traitor Space Marines. So a Chaos Marine and a Chaos Cultist. Chaos Demons have Plague Bearers. They have Bloodletters, Demonettes, and Horrors. And you can go on and you can check out this website yourself. But the point I'm trying to make is that, as always, Space Marines get a lot of choice, which makes them much more flexible as always. And I'm hoping as we go through these, basically, these are the Veteran Guardsmen. You can see there's 9 choices. So because there's a new kit come out with lots of different choices on them, you can see there's loads of choices there. Is it troops or tropes? Basically has a one Harlequin. Basically, that's it. That's it. A player. That's the only choice they've got. You can only take Harlequins. The Comorites have got a Kabbalite warrior there and a witch. So that it's going to be funny in the early days that where some have lots of different choices of what they can take, and some have like one or two choices. And I assume what will happen is we'll see expansions like Elite and Commandos type thing, sort of filling out some of those rosters. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a little bit, I think Marines are going to end up being a bit one-sided from day one, I think, generally. Even things like we've got Tomb Worlds there, so there's a Necron Warrior, an Immortal, a Flayed One, and a Death Mark. Gene Stealer. For High Fleets there, we've got Gene Stealers, Tyrannid Warriors, Termagants, and Hormagants. The Cadre Mercenary has basically got a Kroot Carnivore, a Kroot Hound, and a Kroot Ox. And the last one there being Brood Covens. It's got an Acolyte Hybrid, a Neophyte Hybrid, and a Hybrid Metamorph. So it kind of shows there that basically these are what we will expect to see in this chapter approved type book from day one with all of the stats for these models. But yeah, if you're a Marine player, you're going to have plenty of choice. If you've got any other factions outside of the ones in the box, you're kind of going to be limited, which might not be a bad thing. It might just mean that you don't have to buy quite so many different boxes of stuff to make up a kill team. I think what we'll have a look at probably as this launches and we get more information, we might look at some of the like what's the cheapest kill teams to make, the kind of the easiest entry points from a cost perspective, and we'll see how that goes. Kill team, my thoughts. This is all the information that we know, and this basically explains quite a lot about how the game plays. My thoughts now I've got more information is I think they've brought some really cool things into the game. I think the idea now of dice pools, sort of having 4 dice, trying to get like 3 pluses, not having kind of stat modifiers. So it's not like this modifies your attack to it's normally a 3+, but it goes up to a 4+, that kind of thing. It doesn't look like that's going to be a thing. That looks really interesting. And by stretching out the size of dice pools, the size of the number of dice that you roll, and being able to stretch out what you need to hit in combination with having more wounds and being able to do more damage makes it a lot easier to balance out models because there's a greater range between them. If you basically roll 1 dice and 1 dice basically hits on a 4+, and then it wounds on a 4+, and then basically your opponent's trying to save it with 1 dice on a 4+, a lot of times one of those 4+ is not going to come up and basically nothing happens. At least this way, it basically creates those cinematic moments where there's always something happens. You might only do 1 damage, or you might only do 2 damage to like a 7 wound guardsman, for example, but at least something is happening in that game. I think I read a stat somewhere before that basically, if I'm trying to remember, in current kill team, I think sort of like, is it that you only ever hit something 25% of the time or something. I might be remembering that wrong, but there was some stat about that because there's like a roll to hit, a roll to wound, a roll to save, and you also had your injury rolls. I think it was like most of the time you wouldn't do any damage if you like. So I do like what they're doing with that. I like what they're doing with movement to a certain extent. I still can't get my head around why they had symbols rather than just kind of numbers or saying short, medium, long range or something like that. Why they've got those symbols. I'm not sure why they've then picked colours as well, because the colours they've chosen are quite confusing for colourblind people. So it's a bit of a weird thing with colours and symbols and numbers. But I think there'll be something more that we see during the game that will make that feel more obvious, because I don't want to think that is just somebody going, oh, that would be a good idea, that'll make it a bit different, because that's not a reason to design it into the game. So I'm hoping and expecting we'll see more information that will make that feel a little bit more sort of feasible, if you like. But generally, it feels like it's going to play relatively fast. My concerns maybe are about that kind of face-to-face close combat mechanic of almost this like sort of we all roll our dice and then the game kind of pauses for a second where we say, right, we're going to take turns and right, well, this first one I'm going to do is a hit. And then your opponent goes, oh, well, in that case, this first one I'm going to do is a hit. And then you're saying, right, okay, the second one, well, I'm going to do it as a parry to negate that hit that you just did. And I think that might kind of slow the game down a little bit. It reminds me of Aristea. If anybody's played Aristea by Corvus Belli, it's an arena combat game where you roll a dice. There's lots of different symbols, and you're trying to match symbols up with symbols on your card that cause triggers. And for me, there's always this kind of point in the game where you roll a dice and then you go, right, hang on a second, let me just look and see what I've got, and does this match this card? And that's kind of what's coming up in my mind, and that's what it's making me think about. But until I play it, until I see it in action, those fears might not be founded on anything. So how do I feel about it? Is it a game I'll pick up now? I was apprehensive about Kill Team because I just thought, well, there's plenty of other kind of sci-fi skirmish games out there. I didn't really enjoy Kill Team at its full kind of rules level, if you like, with by the time Commanders and Elites and everything else came out. I quite enjoyed Kill Team as its core box, taking out the specialisms and kind of house ruling a bit of it. But I think I've seen enough now that I might potentially kind of pick this up. The models, they're kind of nice, but that's not really the draw for me. The terrain, I think, could be... I think it's not as obviously used in other game systems and other game settings. So the orc stuff looks very orky. I'm not sure I'd use it in Infinity, for example, or I'm not sure I would use it in kind of Dead Zone or something like that. So I feel like it's very specific or very 40k specific. But it's nice stuff, and it's a little bit different. And in lieu of anything else really coming out at the minute, no more exciting news for anything else really. I think I might be kind of tempted to try and pick this up. If I miss out on the pre-order, I know for a fact I'm going to have to be there prior to 10 o'clock. If I miss out on it, I miss out on it. I'm not going to kind of cry over it because we'll be able to get the rule book later on. But yeah, I must admit my opinion has shifted on this with a bit more information, and I only wish they could have shared some of this stuff. I mean, I've just shared with you in less than half an hour. They could have done exactly this kind of thing when they had the stream a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if it's a game that you're going to be considering picking up. Have you seen enough that you know it's not for you? Are you still waiting for some specific information that you don't know about? Let me know what you think, and I'll look forward to the conversation. Thanks for watching my video. I hope that you really enjoyed it. And if you did, why not consider clicking on the suggested video below to see more of the work that I've done. If you'd like to support the long-term sustainability of this channel, why not consider checking out my Patreon, where you can pledge and support from as little as $2 a month, and there is lots of different tiers and bonuses which will give you access to a private Discord server. It will give you free t-shirts, free mugs, a podcast every month, and a number of other things, including getting your name at the end of every video, like these awesome folks who already support me now.